Okay, so let's consider this graph right here. We're going to call it f of x. And so what we're going to do here, we're going to do a few things in this video. And one of them is we're going to identify the domain and the range of f inverse of x. If we know the graph of f of x, we want to identify the domain and range of f inverse of x. Well, this is actually pretty easy to do if you can identify the domain and the range of f of x. So remember that the domain of f of x is the set of all the x values. So here, the domain goes from x equals -4 up through x equals 4. So the domain here is -4 up to 4, okay? But remember, for f inverse of x, all of the x's become all of the y values. So this -4 up to 4 isn't going to be x values, it's actually going to be y values for f inverse of x. Well, remember that the range is the set of all the y values. And so what that means is that the domain of f of x is the range of f inverse of x. And that's the same for the range becoming the domain. So then the range of f of x, okay, which is all the y values, becomes the domain of f inverse of x, because all the y's from f of x become all the x's of f inverse of x. So all we have to do is identify the domain and range of f of x, and then call the domain the range, and call the range the domain. Well, let's go ahead and do that right now. So to identify the domain and the range of f inverse of x given the graph of f of x, what we'll do is identify the domain and the range of f of x. So for f of x, the domain is, like we said, here's the smallest x value is -4. The largest x value is 4. Okay? And so the domain of f of x runs from -4 up to 4. Now notice, I'm using brackets. I'm using brackets because these are closed circles. If these circles were open circles, I would use parentheses instead of brackets. Okay? All right, what about the range? Well, the range of f of x, okay, we know is from the lowest point. The lowest point is right here, which is 3, up to the highest point here, which is 5. So the range is from -3 up to 5. Range is -3 up to 5. And so, for f inverse of x, all we have to do is swap them. So the domain of f inverse of x is going to be the range of f of x, which is -3 up to 5. And then the range of f inverse of x is going to be the domain of f of x, which is -4 up to 4. Okay, well, if the domain of f inverse runs from -3 up to 5, then we should be able to plug values that are -3 up to 5 and be able to get output values. But we don't have the graph of f inverse, we have the graph of f of x, okay? So if I want to know what f inverse of -3 is, how do I go about doing that, okay? Well, what I want to remind you is this, is that these x values for f inverse are actually y values for f. So what I want to know is, if I was able to identify, well, f of something, f of some x value is equal to the y value of -3. So if I go over here to the graph to where there's a y value of -3, here's a y value of -3. If I go over here, I have this point right here on f of x, and we have -3 when x is equal to 4. So we can say f of 4 is equal to -3, okay? So when f is 4, y on f of x is negative 3. Okay? Well then, if y is negative 3 when x is 4, then on f inverse, when x is negative 3, then y will be 4. Okay? And I'll show you a really easy way to be able to identify that given a graph, and here's how it goes. Is normally, when we want to identify an output value, we go horizontally along the x-axis, we find our number, okay, and then we go, up or down to the graph to find our y value, okay? But with an f inverse, this negative 3 is a y value on f of x. So here's all we have to do, is start at the origin, and instead of going left and right, we'll go up and down. We'll go down to negative 3, and then go over to the graph where it's 4. So now to find f inverse of negative 1, all we have to do is go down to negative 1, and then go over to the graph, and you can see that the answer is 3. So f inverse of negative 1 is 3. And just to confirm, is it true that f of 3 is equal to negative 1? Well, let's check. Let's go over here to 3. Here's 3. Let's go down. Here's our point. Let's go over. Sure enough, negative 1. Okay? And so now you could probably pause the video and do the rest of these. F of negative, or f inverse of 1, we're going to go up to 1 and over. We get a 2. F inverse of 2, we're going to go up to 2 and over, and we get negative 1. F inverse of 3, we're going to go up to 3 and over, and our answer is negative 2. And then f inverse of 4, we're going to go up to 4 and over, and our answer is negative 3. And then f of 5, we're going to go up to 5 and over and down, and our answer is negative 4. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do here is we're going to try and sketch the graph of f inverse of x. So we're going to try and sketch the graph of f inverse of x. Okay? And so in order to do that, we're going to first identify a bunch of points that are on f of x, and you can see negative 4, 5 is here, negative 3, 4 is here. I've listed out all 7 identifiable points on f of x, okay? And so what we're going to do now is we are going to, transpose them into f inverse of x. So negative 4, 5 on f inverse becomes 5, negative 4. Negative 3, 4 becomes 4, negative 3. Negative 2, 3 becomes 3, negative 2. Negative 1, 2 becomes 2, negative 1. 2, 1 becomes 1, 2. 3, negative 1 becomes negative 1, 3. And 4, negative 3 becomes negative 3, 4. Okay. And so now that we've transposed all the points, we're going to go ahead and now plot all of these points on the coordinate plane. Now, to make it easier to see, I'm going to go ahead and erase all of the points that I've written on for f of x. Okay. And so now let's go ahead and plot these points. So let's start with 5, negative 4. So we're going to go to an x value of 5, and we're going to go down to negative 4, and we're going to plot this point right here, okay? Then we're going to plot the point, so that's done. Now we're going to do 4, negative 3. So here's 4, negative 3. Now it's interesting, 4, negative 3 is already on f of x, and that's okay. That happens sometimes, okay? So you can see that right here, 4, negative 3, okay? All right, now we're going to plot 3, negative 2. So we're going to go 3 down to negative 2, which is right here. Then we're going to plot 2, negative 1, go over to 2, and negative 1, okay? What I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to actually connect these because they look like a straight line, and I'm probably not going to do a good job making a straight line. Actually, let me do a better job than that, making a straight line. I'm going to try and use the straight line feature here if I can. There we go. And that's pretty good. Well, it's not as good as I had hoped. There we go. And now we're going to go here to 1, the point 1, 2. All right, well, here's 1 and here's 2. There we go. Okay. And then the point -1, 3. So we'll go to -1 and 3, which is right here. And then we're going to go to the point -3 and 4. So -3 and 4, which is also on the graph of f of x right here. That's right here. Okay. And so now let's go ahead and connect these with some dots, or with some lines, I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and start drawing here. And there we go. And then I'm going to start drawing here. And there we go. And so what we have just drawn, what is in blue, is the graph of f inverse of x. And we can understand this point, or this line, very well if we were to draw in the y equals x line, which we can. Let's go ahead and draw it in red, okay? And so let's see here. So I'm going to try and do it down here. Hopefully I can do a pretty good job of it. I'm going to start right here, maybe. Hang on. Let's start right here. There we go. And there is the line, y equals x. And so now you can see the two graphs, f of x and f inverse of x, they intersect right on the line y equals x. And you can see that it creates sort of an interesting spun, flipped picture here. If you can imagine it, this blue line here, graph, it reflects over this red line right here. You can see that this point is associated with this point here, and this point is associated with this point here, and this point is associated with this point here. This line right here is associated with this line here. This line is associated with this line, and this line is associated with this line right here. Okay? And so that's how you sketch the graph of f inverse of x, and that's all we have to say here about inverses of functions.